Fantasy Baseball Picks and Bets presented by Prize Picks. I'm JT Hayes. You can find me at JT Hayes Jr. on Twitter.com, and you can also find me at RunPureSports.com and even RunPureBets.com. By now, you're probably familiar with Prize Picks if you're watching these videos religiously, as you should be, but basically, really simple. Prize Picks using DraftKings fantasy scoring. You pick the over or under of points that you think a particular player is going to get in that given situation. And even better than that, if you enter code MMN MLB, that's MMN like Mayo Media Network, MLB, you can get a $100 deposit match on prizepicks.com. Like this video, subscribe to the Mayo Media Network so that you can take advantage of this information, free information, that we're giving you 7 days a week throughout the baseball season. We'll have it for the NFL and, of course, all of the major sports. Once again, code MMN MLB, MMN like Mayo Media Network, MLB, get a $100 deposit match at prizepicks.com and start winning today. Going to focus on the 11-game slate that begins at 7:05 Eastern on Monday night. Welcome back from the All-Star break. Hopefully you all enjoyed a nice week, relaxing, enjoyed the All-Star game, and enjoyed the return of baseball this weekend, and just a ton of offense. On Monday night, a couple of things that I see right now with Prize Picks having about 4 games up is I want to focus on the game in Cincinnati. The New York Mets coming out of Pittsburgh, heading into the Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati. And they'll have Jared Eichhoff on the mound. I'm not sure where Jared Eichhoff was before the Mets picked him up and immediately inserted him into the starting rotation that needed some arms as a result of some injuries. More on that in a couple of minutes. But it certainly wasn't facing the type of competition that he's going to face in Cincinnati on Monday night. And I like some of these overs on the Cincinnati Reds players. I know they haven't been doing a whole lot lately, but look, when Jared Eichhoff and this New York Mets bullpen come into town, I think it's a situation that we can take advantage of. And I like Jesse Winker's over at 7.5 fantasy points. I like Jonathan India's over at 7 fantasy points. And look, the Mets just coming out of a back-and-forth series. They scored a ton of runs. They gave up a ton of runs in Pittsburgh. I think you'll see much of the same in this series. But one thing I will say, I'm not sure why Vegas hates Vladimir Gutierrez. He's struggled in difficult matchups. But other than that, he's been pretty good. He's been pretty serviceable. And as of right now, things could change. This is why I always say, get over to runpuresports.com during the day, see what we're talking about. But I'm going to take the under on Pete Alonso, 7.5 fantasy points here. He just competed, won again, once again, and made a ton of money doing so. The home run derby, but, you know, it takes a little while. There's a little bit of a hangover coming out of that. And I think that in this matchup, I think the Reds get ahead pretty early, and I think it's going to be an interesting game. I'm not going to say the Mets aren't going to score any runs, but my lean right now is that I think there's going to be some type of Reds onslaught here, beginning with scoring against Jared Eichhoff early in that game. So I'm going to take the under on Pete Alonso. Again, more lines are going to pop out at prizepicks.com throughout the day. That's why you should be tuning in to the Mayo Media Network and also checking in at runpuresports.com. We've got a channel in our Discord dedicated to prizepicks.com, and we've got an analyst there who's just phenomenal. Luke Guest does a lot of modeling, and all throughout the day, he puts up what he thinks are the best lines, the best edges, if you will, for prizepicks.com. So get on over there, runpuresports.com on Monday, and prizepicks.com. Coming out of the All-Star break, it's going to be a really interesting second half of the season. We're starting to see some things play out. One of those things is something I talked about right here about a month ago, and that's Major League Baseball's crackdown on what they call the sticky substances, right? The spider tack, the pine tar, the different mixes that pitchers were using, both to grip the ball and also, as some would say, give them an unfair advantage in terms of increasing the spin and the movement on the baseball. And my prediction was, look, short term, these guys are going to have a bit of a challenge adjusting, even the better pitchers, to gripping the ball differently, to not using these substances. But I always thought that the better pitchers were going to figure it out. They were going to make their adjustments, and they were going to be okay in the long run, if maybe not quite as dominant in every single matchup as we've seen over the last couple of seasons for some of these guys. And that certainly has played out over the last couple of weeks, where we've seen absolutely dominant performances by Garrett Cole, dominant performances by Lucas Giolito against the Orioles, but then also against the Houston Astros, and great performances by Corbin Burnes, Carlos Rodon, and Max Scherzer gave up a couple of runs against the Padres on Sunday, but ultimately got it together and put together a really good performance against one of the hottest teams in Major League Baseball. So I think the lesser of the pitchers are going to still struggle with this, but in terms of the stars, the guys that are aces, I think they're going to be just fine moving forward. I think most of these guys have figured it out. In terms of injuries, our old unwelcome friend COVID made a return this week, and actually even before the All-Star break, scratching a couple of guys in the Phillies and Red Sox series, and put a couple of players on the bench for the Rockies and the Yankees. Didn't seem to affect the Yankees too much, as they are on their way to taking 2 of 3 from the Red Sox over the course of this weekend, but they had to do so with some fill-in players. So something to keep an eye on moving forward. Non-COVID injuries, man, it was a tough week for the New York Mets. Talked about the Mets a little bit here. Talked about their management of Jacob deGrom, their historical injury management, the obscurity with which they deal with player injuries. But there's nothing you can feel here except just empathy. Frankie Lindor goes out of the game over the weekend against the Pirates with a oblique injury. Looks like he's going to miss potentially as much as 6 weeks. And then Jacob deGrom with that forearm, those arm and back injuries that have been troubling him off and on throughout the course of this year. It is a shame, because he was, and perhaps still is going to, put together one of the most outstanding seasons we've seen from a starting pitcher. Game best ERA, but right now he's going to miss at least 10 games. So a couple of injuries there that may impact the race in the National League East. As far as performances, I've talked about the good performances, but Mike Foltynewicz has been a guy who I've enjoyed watching him kind of build his way back into being a at least league average Major League Baseball pitcher. He's a guy that you have to feel for with the talent, with the things that he's been through in terms of the postseason games in Atlanta. And he'd pitched pretty well recently, 3 really good outings against the Oakland Athletics in the span of about a month, and he came crashing back to earth on Sunday in just 1 inning, 10 earned runs, including 4 home runs. It was against the Toronto Blue Jays. It was away at the Toronto Blue Jays' current home field, Salem Field in Buffalo, but still, man, 1 inning, 10 earned, 4 home runs. Not a great performance, and we'll see what happens with Folty moving forward. In terms of the rest of this season, look, it's going to be a survival of the fittest in a lot of these division races. We're seeing a ton of injuries for these teams outside of the pitching, and it's going to be, look, I think there's a couple of divisions that are going to have really interesting races. Toronto gets to go home back to the Sky Dome beginning on July 31st, looks like. And you've got races in the American League East. You're going to have a race in the American League West where there's 4 teams in contention. Everybody except the Rangers has a shot at the American League West. It's going to come down to the trade deadline in the National League East to see who can shore up their pitching, bullpen, and in some cases, their offense is the best. And then look, the National League West, 3-team race. San Francisco in the lead by a game right now over the Dodgers, but don't look now. The Padres are red hot, and they are coming for that division challenge. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the National League West over the course of the rest of this season. All right, as I mentioned, in 11-game slate on Monday night, we're going to take a quick look at the pitching and the offenses. And as I always say, this is my first look. Things could and often do change tomorrow. That's why if you're watching this and you're not a member of Run Pure Sports, please visit runpuresports.com, enter code OPEN50. You get 50% off of your first month's payment. That's OPEN50. What we do at Run Pure Sports is really, it's a 24/7 dedication to fantasy sports. We cover every sport. We cover esports. We cover everything. I talked about how we cover prize picks, but tomorrow we'll have a slate strategy. We'll have a playbook that talks about the best plays, pitching, offense, in terms of stacks, and even individual plays for each position in Major League Baseball. We do this for every sport, by the way. And we've got a Discord. We'll have core plays, and we'll have a couple of shows. One is free for non-members, so if you're not a member, get onto the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel and check out our Swing for the Fences show at 4:30 p.m. on Monday. And if you are a member and you aren't watching the premium Up to Lock show, what we call it during MLB season is the MLB Countdown, beginning at 6 p.m. So we've got a ton of content all throughout the day in case what I'm about to tell you changes. And a lot of times it does, right? Lineups change, pitchers get scratched, especially when we're dealing with health and safety protocols, as we're seeing now more, once again, for some of these teams. So runpuresports.com, enter code OPEN50, and you get 50% off of your first month's subscription payment. So right off the bat, my first look, couple of things that stand out to me as far as pitching. Kevin Gausman, San Francisco Giants, been dominant all year, 31% strikeout rate, an expected ERA, that's the ERA that all things considered, defense, things like that. He should have a 2.85 ERA. Been really, outside of Jacob deGrom, in the National League, maybe the second best pitcher all season long. The Giants go into Los Angeles, and it's not an easy matchup by any stretch of the imagination, but the Dodgers coming out of altitude, coming out of Coors, getting home there to the cooler weather at night in Los Angeles, and I think Kevin Gausman, after being scratched over the weekend for a personal matter, I think he's in a good spot here. $10K, right at the price point that I would say that's the most I want to pay for him. But in this matchup, like I said, with the Dodgers coming back to Los Angeles, I like it quite a bit as my first look pick here for Monday night slate. Second guy I'm looking at, price down. This was a pitcher who just a couple of weeks ago was $9K on DraftKings. He's only 6.6 against the Texas Rangers. That's Casey Mize. Casey Mize putting together a really solid season. 20% strikeout rate on the season. Pretty good for a guy in his second year playing in what is a division with some really, really talented offenses. And look, Texas played 2 on Sunday against the Toronto Blue Jays. They travel into Detroit, and they've been scuffling pretty hard against both handedness of pitchers, but in particular against right-handed pitchers. So as of right now, Casey Mize makes for a very nice SP2 on DraftKings at just 6.6, allowing us to fit in some of these higher-powered offenses that I think, despite the travel day, are in really good spots on Monday night. And speaking of offenses, man, is there a hotter team right now than the San Diego Padres? I mean, look at what they're doing. 24 runs against the Nats on Friday night. Amazing performance, 10 runs in a game that stretched from Saturday into Sunday against the Nationals, and they put up a bunch of runs in a walk-off loss to the Nats on Sunday. This team, these guys are just absolutely on fire. They head into Atlanta, and they take on Kyle Muller and this Atlanta Braves bullpen. Kyle Muller has been really, really good since making his Major League debut. Really great games against the Cincinnati Reds, the Miami Marlins, and even the New York Mets. But the San Diego Padres are just a different beast right now. And as hot as they are, I can't see Kyle Muller and this Atlanta Braves bullpen that got, I don't know, stronger or weaker depending on how you look at it with the DFA or, I guess, reassignment of A.J. Minter on Sunday night. I think this Padres team is going to have their way with Kyle Muller and the Atlanta Braves bullpen. A couple of guys I like here. Let's start at leadoff. Tommy Pham, 4.2. Going to take advantage of that left-handed starter. Fernando Tatis Jr., 6K on DraftKings. Manny Machado, 5.9, but then you get a little bit lower in that order, and you get to Will Myers at 3.7. Honestly, with the way that this team is hitting, I don't mind Jake Cronenworth, and I don't mind Victor Caratini. Caratini just 2.2 on DraftKings. I do think that the Padres may be in the best spot of the night here in Atlanta against the rookie and this bullpen. Talked a little bit when we talked about Prize Picks about Jared Eichhoff and the New York Mets bullpen, and I don't think that they're going to be much of a match for the Cincinnati Reds team. I know the Reds have cooled off a bit of late, but they do stay home. They don't travel. And Jared Eichhoff has an expected ERA of 10 plus, and it just hasn't happened that way for him yet. But I think on Monday night, things are going to happen that way. A couple of guys I like in this Cincinnati Reds lineup: Jonathan India at 4.4, Jesse Winker priced all the way down to 4.2. Tyler Naquin is 2.5 on DK. Even if you hate these stacks that I'm talking about, Tyler Naquin at 2.5 against Jared Eichhoff and the New York Mets bullpen is a guy that should be in your player pool, and honestly, you should consider locking him in. And then Joey Votto, 5.1. Joey Votto coming to life this season, having a much better season than he has the last couple of years. I really like the Cincinnati Reds here. And then one bonus pick, I'm not even going to talk about the players because it looks like a couple of guys are questionable. John Lester is pitching for the Nationals. They had a dramatic walk-off victory against the Padres on Sunday. They went back and forth with the Padres all weekend in a title fight. They do stay home, but man, Lester has been one of the worst pitchers on the season. And Miami put a little bit of a beating on Zach Wheeler, at least put up some runs on Zach Wheeler and the Phillies on Sunday. Don't mind taking some shots at the Marlins against them on Monday night. A couple of bets I like. Talked about Cincinnati against Eichhoff and the New York Mets bullpen. I like that money line at minus 110. It's even money right now, and I think that's a fairly good value on the Monday night slate. And then the Padres, 1.5 run line favorite against the Atlanta Braves. That's at plus 120. I'd take the Padres. You could parlay these two, and I think there's pretty good value there. Once again, things could change. A lot of things are going to come up throughout the day. Perhaps we don't know still for sure who's pitching for Miami. If it's Trevor Rogers, I may have some interest there. And obviously lineups are going to come out. And we're going to have playbooks, core plays, Discord, and then like I mentioned, those 2 shows at the end of the day to really get us locked in on our Major League Baseball lineups. Get to prizepicks.com, enter code MMNMLB, get your $100 deposit match. And then as soon as you finish at PrizePicks, get to runpuresports.com, enter code OPEN50 and get 50% off of your first month's subscription payment. I'm JT Hayes at JT Hayes Jr. on the Twitter.com, and I wish you luck in your contests on Monday night.